As you probably know by now, Clemson made a big splash at defensive coordinator, bringing in Tom Allen from Penn State to come in with loads of experience and be the new leader of the defense, give them an identity, and get the most out of the talent they already have in that room. What's come out more recently is very interesting, and I don't totally hate it. So Tom Allen will not be going on the road for off-campus recruiting, and he will not technically be the linebackers coach. Now, I think to fully understand this, you have to understand the changing of the rules recently. Now, you still only get 10 official coaches who can go off campus for recruiting trips, and you can allocate those 10 how you like. But now analysts, senior analysts, whatever, can interact with players. It used to be that you could have only 10 coaches who would work with players, and those same 10 would be the ones who are on the road recruiting. But now you can divvy that up differently. So what they'll be doing is Tom Allen will be focused on the defense, focused on the entire defense, and not focused on going on the road and traveling, right? So that frees up his time from traveling, sitting on planes and in the car, and also some one-on-one time with the linebackers. That frees that up for more schematics, more planning, more film, more getting to know the entirety of the defense. I think that's probably a good thing. Now, filling the role of officially being the linebackers coach and going out on the road and being the 10th guy who is recruiting off campus. Of course, Tom Allen will still be recruiting, digitally, which is a big part of it. Text, social media, phone, all of that. And of course, on campus visits. But the guy going on the road for him will be 30-year-old Ben Boulware, one of the greatest Clemson linebackers, or certainly the most charismatic Clemson linebackers of the era. He is a quintessential figure in Clemson sports lore and that title run, the 2016 team. I will admit I'm biased. He's probably my favorite Clemson defensive player of all time. Now, he is young, at only 30, to be a official, one of the 10 official coaches on the team. But with the way it is now, it's a bit different in that you could bring back this legend to go on the road, recruit. He's only 30. He shouldn't be that hard to connect with these young guys out of high school. And then he's going to have plenty of help at linebackers coach, right? So he's got Thomas Allen, who's an analytics guy and defensive analyst over at Penn State with his father, Tom Allen. He's also going to be helping coach linebackers. And of course, even though it may not officially be in his title anymore, Tom Allen, I'm sure, will have plenty of involvement with the linebackers. So I'm not overly concerned about that. The other thing to think about is linebackers not really a position like offensive line coach, where there are non-coordinator offensive line coaches that are paid big bucks, that are extremely impactful and vitally important to the health of a program. Think about Matt Luke and the huge impact he made in year one. I don't know that that's quite the same for a linebacker coach. And from Football Scoop, looking at some of the big name or highest paid linebacker coaches, a lot of them are coordinators. Obviously, Brent Venables being probably the biggest name linebacker coach, who's also a coordinator. Blake Baker at LSU, Pete Golding at Ole Miss, Glenn Schumann at Georgia, Pete Kwiatkowski at Texas. Those are just some of the big name linebacker coaches, but they're coordinators too. When you get down to the linebacker coaches that aren't coordinators, quite the difference. You got William Inge at Tennessee, Mike Stoops at Kentucky, not Mark Stoops, Christian Robinson at Alabama. None of these guys are making $1 million. William Inge is $720,000. Sterling Lucas at South Carolina is under $600,000. I mean, certainly a great living, not in any way saying that's pennies. It's obviously an outstanding living, but it's just a little bit different, not quite as high stakes as, say, defensive line coach, offensive line coach, certainly some of the other positions. So I think this is a good way for Sweeney to more fully leverage his resources. You get an analyst like Boulware and you send him on the road. He's young. He's got the energy. He's got sort of the charisma and cachet of being a Clemson legend. Go on the road, recruit, and start building both your resume and your skill set to be a great coach long-term, possibly at Clemson. Meanwhile, you let Tom Allen focus on being the defensive coordinator, building relationships across the whole team. I don't hate it, right? I've been pretty critical of some of the internal hires, but this, I think, is more of a way to just use your staff more efficiently. I don't know that they necessarily needed to bring in some elite linebackers coach to fix the problem. I think what you're bringing in now, replacing Wes Goodwin, fixing the scheme, I think those go a long way. Sort of trickling down from this, and this is what they did at Penn State. So first, let me back up a little bit. When I first heard the news that he wouldn't go on the road recruiting, I thought, oh, well, that's how Clemson pulled Tom Allen from Penn State and was able to get him to come to Clemson. I mean, obviously the money helps. Obviously, being closer to his family in the Carolinas helps, but not making him travel, that's huge too. Well, he was already doing that at Penn State. So Coach Franklin was one step ahead of the Tigers on this one, already finding this efficiency. So conceptually, I like it. And then I don't know if there's anything still official, but it sounds like this is also happening on offense, where they'll take all the travel off of offensive coordinator Garrett Riley's plate, let him focus on the entire offense, and let Tajh Boyd make those recruiting trips. And again, and you can see over my shoulder here, wrong side, this one, Tajh Boyd right behind me, right? He's a Clemson legend, probably my favorite Clemson offensive player of all time. And that's going to be the case for a lot of folks. I mean, he's the quarterback that got this whole thing rolling, right? He's a star. He has all sorts of ACC records. I think a lot of them still standing for passing yards and whatnot. Guy was a star and really kind of is charismatic as well, right? Commands presence in the room just like Boulware does. So I don't know how much of an impact quarterback coaches who aren't coordinators, how critical they are. There's a couple for sure. Chris Winkie at Georgia Tech, kind of being the one that really comes to mind. He makes $633,000, is the highest paid non-coordinator QB coach. And after him, it's a lot of guys you haven't heard of, right? Darren Hinshaw from UCF, Tino Sunseri from Indiana. You know, it's a lot of guys that most of you probably haven't heard of, because usually it's the offensive coordinator who's the QB coach. So I imagine, again, this is more so a move that's going to get Garrett Riley to some extent to focus on the whole team, but I imagine he's going to still be working extremely closely with the quarterbacks. But the main thing is Boyd's going to be traveling instead of him. So you're giving him that time back. You're utilizing Boyd more efficiently while also growing him. I think it's a pretty efficient use of your resources and of the new rule where you can have one guy be the off-campus recruiting guy, and he could still coach, but then you can have your defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator not go on the road, right? So you're using the rules to your advantage. Strategically, I think it's pretty smart. Now let's talk about Clemson basketball a little bit. They have responded really well after losing back-to-back overtime games to Memphis and South Carolina, two pretty tough losses. They responded by winning 6 out of their last 7. And, not all of that's great competition, but the last one was. They went on the road, won in overtime at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is 33 in KenPom. Pittsburgh is also 33 in the net, and that is a quad 1 win because it was on the road. So very valuable win for the Tigers there. They came out looking amazing. Took a 14-point lead early in that second half and blew the whole thing, and were actually trailing fairly late. They forced overtime really because of their defense. At that point, the offense often wasn't even getting shots off. The most inexplicable of those situations was when they got trapped, burned a timeout, was pretty bad. And there was 9 seconds on the shot clock when they inbounded, and they didn't know how much time was left on the shot clock, and Dylan Hunter doesn't get the shot off in time. Really, really poor, just poor offensive execution. I love Brad Brownell, but they were just not coming up with ideas and not coming up with plays, no set plays. They couldn't figure it out throughout a big chunk of that second half. I thought Chase Hunter made some bad decisions, but his execution was so unbelievable that he was still awesome. He had 20 points, and of course he had a pretty epic shot that iced the game. Clemson was up. They go down and they fail to do anything. Didn't really even get a shot off. Jaden Zachary got into the lane and just sort of lost it. Pittsburgh goes down, cuts it to 2, and then Clemson's got the ball. You score, you pretty much win the game. They burn the clock all the way down, and then Chase Hunter just launches the 3 and just buries it, puts him up 5 with very little time left, ices the game. Really, really impressive. He's the star of this team. He's been awesome. Some numbers on Chase Hunter here. His offensive rating is 127, which is 10 spots more, 10 higher than anyone else on the team. The next most efficient offensive player is Jaden Zachary at 117. For context, that 127.3 offensive rating for Chase Hunter, again, a measure of offensive efficiency, is 105th in the entire nation. I mean, he's been a stud. He shot 31% for three last year. He's shooting 45.5% from three this year. He's 50 for 110. I mean, that's incredible. I'm sure that'll come back down to earth a little bit, but I think last year was artificially low. This year, maybe it's a little high now, but he should shoot over 40% from three. It's crazy. You know, I see a lot of Clemson fans complain about Clemson taking too many three-pointers. And to some extent, perhaps that's true, but Clemson is 13th nationally in three-point percentage at 38.9%. That's just it. When you look back at some of the old Clemson teams under Brownell that couldn't shoot, they'd play great defense, they'd move the ball, but they just didn't have great shooters. It's obvious now, but just having three-point shooters to space the floor is sort of the name of the game in college basketball. Clemson actually shoots a pretty normal amount of threes. 40.4% of their field goal attempts are three. That's 148th nationally. So they actually don't shoot a huge amount of threes. They just make a lot of them. They're number 2 in the ACC in ACC play, and they're number 13 nationally of all their games. So they're now 15-4, 7-1. Look, beating Duke is going to be really, really hard. Duke is number 1 in KenPom. They're going to be really tough. They are number 2 in the net. That's going to be a tough game. But they get them at home, and if they win that, they control the ACC, which is pretty incredible to say. You look at this next stretch upcoming, they've got Syracuse on Wednesday at 7 p.m. KenPom gives them a 91% chance to win that game. The thing with Syracuse, they're a bad shooting team. Their three-point percentage is towards the bottom of the country, 328th, 29.6. I mean, that's abysmal. They're not fantastic inside the paint either. Both their offense and defense are outside the top 130, whereas Clemson is 29th in offensive efficiency and 33rd in defensive efficiency. So this is a team that plays great defense. They shoot the ball well. They don't turn it over too much. They're 95th nationally in turnover percentage, which is okay. It's above average, obviously. This is a really good Clemson team. Very much comparable to last year. And Ian Shefflin's not even fully healthy. It's just you've seen some guys take a big step. Victor Larkin did not play well against Pittsburgh, but he's been good overall, particularly defensively. He's 37th nationally in block percentage at 8.9%. He's a great shot blocker, a phenomenal presence in terms of just clogging up the lane and forcing teams to shoot from the outside. So he's been really valuable, a great addition. Jaden Zachary's been a huge bonus defensively. I mean, he's helped this team defensively so much. I love Joe Girard, and Clemson misses him, and he's kind of for a one-and-done guy, one-and-done meaning, transfer in for 1 year, and then he's gone. He's kind of a Clemson, I don't want to say legend, but a guy we'll always remember and appreciate. Zachary can kind of be the same. Zachary's three-point shooting has started off really cold, but he's been great lately. Last year, he shot 40.5%. This year, he's up to 35.4%. And that's because he's been really hot lately. He was 2 for 5 against Pittsburgh, 3 for 5 against Georgia Tech. These are all three-point shooting. 3 for 4 against Florida State, and 2 for 5 against Louisville. Before that, he had a stretch of 1 for 13 in 3 games prior. So he's really turned it on. I think that's made a big difference for this Clemson team. But yeah, so back to the upcoming schedule. Clemson's got Syracuse, who they very much should beat. Virginia Tech is one of the worst teams in the conference. They're 171st in KenPom. That's on the road, but they're so bad. Clemson should absolutely win those 2 games and get to 9-1. Then you go to NC State. I watched NC State's game against Cal, and defensively, they're very, very tough. They pressed and really gave a full court press and gave Cal a really hard time, but they lost that game. They dropped to 9-9 overall, 2-5 in the conference. They've lost 3 in a row. I expect them to lose to SMU on Saturday, even though they're at home, and then go on the road and lose to Duke, which would be 5 straight losses before Clemson. The thing is, they don't shoot. They are 31.5% from 3. And like I said, if you can't make threes, that's sort of the name of the game. They're 269th nationally in three-point percentage. And I think in the modern game, if you can't shoot threes, you're just not going to be that good. It's just so critical to space the floor and be able to make those threes. We saw so much in that Pittsburgh game. Clemson would play great defense, give up an offensive rebound. Inevitably, that ends up being a 3, and Pittsburgh would make it. And that's what helped Pitt stay in the game early, would help their comeback. Three-pointers are just so critical, and NC State doesn't do that. So I look at Syracuse, Virginia Tech, NC State, and they get Georgia Tech at home. They already beat them on the road, and I know Georgia Tech had that huge comeback win against Clemson in Clemson last year, but they can't shoot either. I don't think they're very good. I was actually very high on them coming into the year, but a lot of their guys haven't made the progress that they should have. I know Clemson beat them without their leading scorer, Lance Terry, and he's back now. But they just got blown out by Florida State, 91-78. That was on the road. They lost 4 straight. They should pick up a win against Virginia Tech or Notre Dame, one of those two before Louisville and then Clemson. But I don't think they're that good. So I think Clemson's got a great shot to win 4 in a row. Certainly should at least go 3-1 before Duke. So that could be a pretty big matchup in Clemson. 2 ranked teams, 2 teams probably in the top 20 of Ken Palm at that point. Will be really exciting to watch. This is a special Clemson team. I know a lot of folks are more focused on football even during the offseason, but don't miss out. This is a pretty special stretch of Clemson basketball. You got the Elite Eight run. You got another team that looks just about as good. So don't miss it. As always, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like, and don't forget our sponsor, Ready Vets. If you're in the upstate, be sure to check them out. If you have a dog or cat and you can't get to a vet office and you need to get your pet taken care of quickly, that's the place to go. As always, go Tigers.